continue on the abduction of Dinah and how the Rebbe flips this on his face in the most crazy, beautiful, feminist way. Today's class is sponsored by Tiferet Sarit in honor of her son, Neve Shanan, for his birthday Parsha. Thank you so much for sponsoring. If anyone would like to sponsor a class, there's a link below to do so. Okay, this class, I literally don't feel like I could go through Parshat Vaishlach without covering this topic because it is so unbelievable. So we have the second part of this Parsha, after Yaakov and Eisav make peace and go their separate ways and vow to meet up at Har Seir. We now have Yaakov traveling, and finally he sets up camp and buys land right near Shechem. He buys the land from the son of Shechem. Shechem is the name of the land. It's also the name of the prince of Shechem. Now, this is how it begins. This is in your sources, the third source. Bereshis, Perek Lamed Dalet, Pasuk Aleph. V'teitze Dinah bas Leah, right? So the end of last time it says that they set up camp, and he sets up a Mizbeach to thank Hashem for the God of Israel. Now we have V'teitze Dinah bas Leah. This is the famous story, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, that she birthed Yaakov, Asher Yaldel Yaakov, Liras b'bnos Ara. She went out to hang out with the girls of the land, to see the girls of the land in Shechem. Vayar osa Shechem ben Chamor, Shechem the prince, Vachivi, Nesia Aretz. He sees her and he falls in love with her. Vayikach osa, he takes her, he sleeps with her. Vayishkav osa, and then he rapes her. Vayana, and he rapes her. V'tidbak nasha b'dina, he falls in love with her. Bas Yaakov, the daughter of Yaakov. Vayav asanara, and he loves her, and he speaks to her heart, and he speaks about her nonstop, and he tells his father, get me this girl, I need to marry her. And there comes the story, the saga of Yaakov hearing about it, and then his sons hear about it, and they decide to take revenge, and they tell them, we can't marry your daughters unless they have a bris milah, unless they have a circumcision. All the males have to circumcise. They Ki'ilu agree to this deal and this trade that we'll give you our daughters, and they said we'll give you our land for free. And then after all the males are circumcised, and then they're weak on their 3 days, they went and killed all the men, and then they took all the women and the children to become part of the Jewish people. Assumingly they all did teshuvah before. So yeah, Yaakov is very angry. He curses them for their anger, for their impulsivity, for what they did, etc. And then that is the end of the story. Now we're focusing on this unusual terminology that says V'teitze Dinah, that Dinah went out, Bas Leah. Why does the Torah need to tell us, add these words, Bas Leah? We know who her mother is. We know who Dinah is. Already told us that Dinah was born to Leah. Leah davened so that it should be a girl, so that her sister wouldn't have less tribes than the maidservants. Oh, how dare you overeat a smoothie. Shout out to Siftach for hosting the shir. And so Rashi, okay, so let's look at this Rashi. Dinah Bas Leah. Rashi comments, why is she called Bas Leah? The low Bas Yaakov, and not Bas Yaakov. It says she was the daughter of Leah, to say she's Leah's daughter, not Yaakov's daughter. Ella al shem yitziasa nikras Bas Leah, because of her outgoingness, because she went out. It says the words V'teitze Dinah, she went out. Sha'af hiyatz anas Haisa, because Leah was exactly the same. That's why she was Leah's daughter. Where do we see that Leah was the same? In last week's parsha it says V'teitze Leah lekrasai. Leah, the same words, V'teitze Dinah, V'teitze Leah. She went out when? To seduce her husband Yaakov. When she swapped, when was this? We'll get to in a minute. Ve'aleha nimshalu V'teitze Leah lekrasai. So just like Leah was outgoing, she was not like the typical Jewish woman. She went out to seduce Yaakov. Dinah was the same, seemingly. She went out, maybe to seduce people, we don't know, and she got taken. Now, this is mistranslated. This Rashi is taken and mistranslated, and by people who, with maybe toxic influence from this Western idea of if a woman goes out dressed a certain way and then she gets raped, that it was her fault in some way, or if she went out and slept with a man consensually and then he raped her, that somehow that's okay, or if a woman is married, right, then to a man and he could rape her, that's okay, etc. So maybe that was the influence of many people who use this and say, look, but V'teitze Leah, she went out unchaperoned, alone, just Dinah, V'teitze Dinah. She learned this from her mother, who also went out to solicit Yaakov to come sleep with her, which was very uncharacteristic of Jewish women, which is what it says. And therefore, the next pasuk, what's the next pasuk? Then Shechem sees her. Vayar osa, Shechem sees her, and then he rapes her. There's a subtle implication, that seems to be a subtle implication, that Dinah somehow was somewhat guilty she did something wrong as well, that she was guilty in some way. And there is actual Mefarshim who very strongly hint to this. They say that if she was Bas Rachel, the Or Chaim says if she was Bas Rachel, it doesn't say that she brought upon the rape. It says she was Bas Rachel. She would never have gone out unchaperoned alone because Rachel was much more previous, and because she was Leah's daughter and Leah would go out, that's why she did it. Now, when did Leah go out? Let's go back a little bit. When did this happen? This happened in last week's Parsha, when we see that Yaakov had to divide his nights amongst his 4 wives, right? He would sleep with different wives every night, and they were divided somehow. And one day, Leah has many children. Rachel is barren, and she sees Reuven coming and bringing flowers. He picks flowers for his mother, and she says, "I want those flowers." And she says, "Fine, I'll trade you them. Tonight's your night to sleep with our husband. If you give me your night with Yaakov, I'll give you the flowers." And Rachel agrees, and she trades it. And that night, Yaakov doesn't know where he's going, so Leah, it says, adorned herself, so made herself beautiful, sprayed herself, and she comes out to tell Yaakov to tell him, "You're sleeping with me tonight. You're with me tonight." And so, seemingly, it says that's something that the Jewish women normally don't do. Women are much more private, much more hinting. And Leah was seemingly it was an audacious thing to do, to come out adorned and say, "Yaakov, you're in my tent tonight." So seemingly, that's how it comes across. Now, there's other Mefarshim that say differently, that it wasn't because of that, etc. But the Rebbe says, for anyone who tries to use this as a way to tell people cautionary tale, like don't go out alone, don't go out dressed a certain way, don't be more inward, stay in your tent, like the Imahos. This is not what the pasuk is telling us. There's no chance that that's what Rashi is coming to tell us. No chance what the pasuk is telling us. And the Rebbe brings proof, and his proof is that chas v'shalom to say that the Torah would put in extra words, bas Leah, that Rashi is saying just to teach us that, just like Leah did something negative and went out, unlike uncharacteristic Jewish women, the Dinah did something negative. The Torah wouldn't add letters to say something negative about anybody, especially not a tzaddik. And how do we know this? Because in Noach, in Parshas Noach, the Torah added words just to not say behema tmeya. That when it speaks about the non-kosher animals, it says behema asher einanu tahora, which makes the Torah use 13 extra letters just to not say the word tameh about animals, to not disgrace the animals. And that's the animals. And here we're talking about a tzaddik. And specifically, as Rashi himself says, Zecher tzaddik levracha. So he contradicts himself. If we only mention, it says anytime a tzaddik is mentioned, it's for a bracha. And here we're mentioning Bas Leah, and it would be just to teach something negative, that just like Leah but was Yatzanis, was an outgoing woman or an outside person, so too Dinah was. So he says it's impossible. And some Mefarshim all ask this, right? Well, how could the Torah say something negative about Leah and Dinah? And some Mefarshim, I think the Barbanel tries to answer this and says, well, the Torah is trying to say it's not Dinah's fault, to exonerate Dinah, and saying she learned it from her mother Leah. She didn't do anything wrong. It was because her mother was like that. She was like that. And the Rebbe says chas v'shalom to say that the Torah would never, the Torah wouldn't exonerate one person by shaming another person, especially a tzaddik. It's impossible to say that he would add the words bas Leah just to shame her and to say that disgrace her, to say to do something negative. It has to be that the Torah is adding it to teach us something positive. That just like Leah, but Tetzei Leah was a positive thing, also but Tetzei Dinah was a positive thing. And yeah.
It also says though that she went with the women. She went
to see the woman, but still she was unchaperoned, she was alone, and women usually stayed in their tents. You might think that. So I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So let's go back to the story of Leah. So if we go back, the Rebbe says, to the story of Leah, and it says actually when she went out to solicit Yaakov, even though it was uncharacteristic, she was blessed for that. Rashi there already says, Rashi doesn't have to say here that Tetzei Dinah was a good thing, because he already said that Tetzei Leah that it was a good thing, because he said that from this desire, going back into where it says Tetzei Leah in last week's Parsha, he says over there that from her desire to be with the tzaddik so much and to have more shvatim, Hashem gave her one extra shevet than she was meant to have. He blessed her with an extra tribe. So we see that when Leah went out to solicit her husband, she was doing something positive. She was showing her love and desire for a tzaddik and to be with her husband, and she was showing her love and her desire to have more children with him. So she was doing something positive, and therefore she was blessed for it and given an extra. If anyone remembers which son she had that night, I don't remember. It was Yehuda? That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. I didn't want to say without being certain. Thank you, Tiferet. So just like he says that, just like when it says Tetzei Dinah, she was just like her mother. And when Leah went out, when it says Tetzei Leah, that she went out to be a positive and it was a good thing that she did that. Then also here about Tetzei Dinah, she's learning from her mother something very positive. She, just like her mother, is an outgoing woman. And what's the positive in this? So we learned something very deep now in Kabbalah, that Rachel and Leah were described in the Torah as Rachel being Yifas Torah, Yifas Mara. Kabbalah tells us she was the soul of a tzaddik, that a tzaddik is all perfection. They only deal with the perfect, with the good in the world. And Leah, her eyes were soft. Her eyes were soft for two reasons. One, because she was told that she would marry Eisav, and that Yaakov would marry Rachel, and she didn't want to have to marry such a big Rasha, a horrible person. And the other reason was because her eyes, her tears were from the tears of Teshuvah, because her soul came from the level of Baal Teshuvah. That her soul came from the level of a greater level than a tzaddik, because a tzaddik doesn't have the power to deal with the darkness. A tzaddik has only the power to deal with the light. But her soul had this greater power. It came from this high level of tohu, just like Eisav's soul, and had the power to deal with the darkness of the world. And therefore, Hashem designed it that she was supposed to marry Eisav. It wasn't like a punishment. Hashem made it that she would marry Eisav and bring him back to Teshuvah, because her soul came from a higher level than Rachel's, where she was able to influence and do Teshuvah. And if she would marry Eisav, then there's a chance she could have brought him back to do Teshuvah, and then Mashiach would have come, because Eisav's power was also from Baal Teshuvah, from tohu, and that's why Yitzchak wanted to give the blessings to Eisav, because he knew this tremendous power that Eisav held from his soul, that had the capacity to. Eisav worked with the land, with the fields, and if he would have used all that power to elevate all of that to Kedusha, then you could have elevated the entire world and brought Mashiach. So the hope was that Leah would marry Eisav, and she would influence him through her soul, her great soul, the Baal's Teshuvah, and bring him to Teshuvah. But Leah didn't want to do that. She davened to Hashem, and we know Hashem listens to her tefillah, and Hashem listened to her and said, okay, you're taking that responsibility off of you. You don't have to. You have free choice in the day. You don't have to take on that responsibility of elevating Eisav. Now we learn something really amazing. In Chazal tell us that Yafa koach haben mi koach ha'av, that anything that any koach that a parent has, this is amazing, in their potential, a child has in a greater capacity. So if a parent has a musical capability, their child could have it in a much larger capacity, because the parent is the spark of potential, like the seed, and then the child takes that seed or that potential and develops it and expounds on it. So Yafa Koach Haben, any capacity, talent, good or bad, that a parent has, the child can take that and expound on it and have it in a much more powerful way. So we learn that Dinah inherited from her mother. Dinah was called Bas Leah because to tell us that she inherited this gift of influencing. Leah was not like the other women that stayed at home and just worried about their families. Leah was an outside influential woman. But Teisei Leah, she was a Baal Teshuvah. Her koach and her power was to influence the whole world, to influence the Gashmias, to make a difference, to go out and empower and to elevate. And Dinah inherited this from her in an even stronger capacity than Leah. And she had this koach to influence and to affect the world and to empower the world in an even stronger way than Leah. And we see this in this craziest way. So now I brought you another source where we see in this week's Parsha that when Yaakov confronts Eisav, it says that he crossed the river with his 11 children, and he brought his 11 children across the river, right? But that he's there. Oh, here we go. Rashi, that he crosses the river, Pasuk Chav Gimel. He woke up in the middle of the night and he takes his 2 wives and his 2 concubines as Achad Asar Yiladav and his 11 children. And Rashi there says, where was Dinah? Why are there 11 children? Binyamin wasn't born, but Dinah was already born. What, we're skipping out Dinah because she's a girl? No. So he says, why 11 children? Where was Dinah? And this is the Rashi in the second page on the sources. The Dinah Echan Haisa. Nitana Bateva Benal Befaneha. He put her in a box and locked it. He locked her inside a box and crossed her on the river. Just process that. That's insane. Right? In those times, it tells us about the perversion of those times, but in those times, locked their wives from kings. Here, he locked her so that Eisav wouldn't see her and want to marry her. She doesn't fall in love with Eisav, okay? And was this a good thing? No. He was punished for this. And Yaakov was punished that he withheld her from his brother. Why? Because she would have been able to make him do teshuvah. Because if her mother Leah had the capacity to make Eisav do teshuvah, how much more so Dinah had the expanded capacity of influencing than Leah, she for sure would have. The only reason Rashi says Shema, the Rebbe says, is because at the end of the day, Eisav has free choice. But Dinah had the capacity to do it. She had the capacity to be so strong in the outside world that she would never have been affected by Eisav's, but she would not have been swayed by Eisav, would not have been able to do anything bad to her, and he wouldn't have been able to influence her negatively, and if he would have given her the chance to see if she wanted to marry him. He didn't give her the chance. He should have let her have the chance to see if she felt like, I want this challenge. I want to influence this man, and I want to use this. I see his potential. I see this massive potential. Many women were attracted to Eisav. He had a lot of it says 400 men, not necessarily were they warriors, they were followers that were looking up to Eisav. He was maybe an attractive man, and that she would have married him and said, I could bring his potential and make him good. And because he withheld this from happening, he was punished. And the punishment is hard for me to understand. It says v'nafla biyad Shechem, that she fell into the hands of Shechem. It's hard because I feel like she had to suffer for his mistake, but it could be that she, I don't know. It could be, yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing. I went to bed Chabad because I know that the children,
Yeah.
So after she gave the Bizayin, which is the flowers, Leah got pregnant and the child that was born was Yisachar.
It is Yisachar.
And it
Yeah.
was because the Sachar that Hashem gave her, and that's
Okay, so
like,
correction. The child born from that night is Yisachar.
present, like,
Yeah.
Sachar.
Right. It was a schar for her outgoingness.
After that, she also had Zebulun
Right.
that she got because he came to live with her permanently. I think that's awesome.
So to summarize everything, we've said that at first glance, God forbid, you could think that Dinah did something negative by going out alone, that she learned this from her mother, Leah, who did something, God forbid, negative. But the Rebbe says it's the exact opposite. This is a message for every Jewish woman and girl in the world. We don't have so many stories in the Torah. We have a lot, but not, we need to take every story in the Torah of our Jewish women and the heroines in the Torah and learn from this. And this is a message, he says, to every Jewish woman. Leah was a new face, a new type. Before that, the Imahos were more inward, were more in their tents, in their families. But Leah imparted to every Jewish girl the capacity of not just influencing their families and their homes, but also the capacity, he says, that women have, from Leah, we get from Leah, every Jewish woman has a much stronger capability than men to influence the world, which is shocking. And Rebbe said this, I don't know how many years ago, but at least 50 years ago, before during the feminist liberation movement, before it was accepted. And he said that every Jewish woman, let me read you those words, has the capacity to influence. That from Dinah's conduct, he says, we can learn that the Jewish women are blessed with the God-given ability to influence others positively, and that we have to, and more so than men, to influence the world, to influence the darkness, to elevate darkness. We have, and that koach comes from within. He says, what does kol kfuda bas melchim mean then? I thought we're supposed to be in the home. He says, no, kol kfuda bas melchim means that your majesty, your glory, your power comes because it comes from your inside. Because we have so much wealth inside of us. It comes from so deep down inside that when something comes from inside, it shoots further outside. And that's a connection to Kislev in Sagittarius month, which the symbol is the archer, because we know that when you pull inwards, you shoot further. And because our koach comes from inwards, and we have a much kol kfuda bas melchim, we have a wealth of bina and inner love. Because we pull more inwards, we have the capacity to reach further outside and to influence every corner of the world outside. So he says that those Jewish women who are gifted with those gifts of Leah to influence the world in some way through their gifts Hashem gave us, through their talents, through their kochos, whatever it might be, through being a good music, art, teaching, judging, healing, coaching, guiding, whatever it might be, every single capacity, any way you have to influence the world, he says that you must, we learn from Dinah that you have to use it to influence the world. Because if you don't, when Yaakov tried to take Dinah's power and her koach of potential to influence, and he locked it inside a box, he was punished for that. He said it's a crime to take all of this power that you have to influence the world and to lock it up and say, you know what, I'm going to lock you in home. I want to save you from the world outside. I don't want you to be influenced negatively. I'm scared what's going to happen to you in the outside world. I'm going to keep you sheltered. He says, obviously, within the confines of halacha, but even within the confines of halacha and the laws of Torah, and even within while adhering to Torah, there's so much room to influence the world, and we don't have to be afraid of our women and girls. And that's what Rebbe sent dozens of years ago women to street corners in Manhattan to stand there and give out neshek, which was Nerot Shabbat Kodesh, which I thought was what neshek meant until I moved to Israel. I literally like, you have neshek? I'm like, yeah, here. Right? I'm like, neshek is Nerot Shabbat Kodesh. Apparently neshek is weapons, but it's, it was very funny. So he gave out neshek to be at the forefront. He said the women are going to be at the forefront of influencing and bringing the light of conquering darkness and bringing light to all the darkest places. And that's in every possible, whatever way that you're gifted with, whatever way that you can. And if you don't, it's like locking it inside a box, and it's the worst thing you can do, right? Yaakov was not just like, he was trying to protect her in the name, he wasn't doing something bad, he was caring about his beautiful daughter. He just, I don't want her to fall in to Eisav. But yet, even though there's a danger, and even though we're worried, don't worry, women are stronger than you think. They don't need to be locked inside a box. And of course, our power to influence begins with our home. But the Rebbe says it doesn't end there. Don't use that excuse. He told a woman once, was telling the Rebbe that she's running a school and it's just taking away from her responsibilities at home. She feels like it's affecting her being a mother. She was a principal. She wanted to quit. And the Rebbe was like, and I was like, yeah, of course he's going to say your family come first. You're a mom. You're our main goal. We're the ones who raise the generation. The Rebbe said, do both. Continue doing both, and Hashem will give you kochos to do both even better, right? So just put more effort. He did not give her a way out. I was very shocked at that. He was like, no, just expand, take on the third thing, right? And don't worry, Hashem will give you the kochos. take extra help. No, he said take extra help at home in the cleaning. You don't need to be doing the cleaning and cooking. That's not what Kok Fuda Bas Melch Pnima means. The Rebbe was the biggest advocate that to have cleaning and cooking help. He said Kok Fuda Bas Melch Pnima means nurturing your children with love and emunah and giving them the emunah for Hashem, teaching them, reading them stories and loving them, but does by no means that you have to be the one making their food or cleaning their house. He says the more children you have, the more help you should hire, and Hashem gives you and he says the budget comes from Hashem. Hashem will keep giving you a greater budget. Don't worry about budget because Hashem will take care of it if you're dedicated to what's important. So to me, this was like revolutionary. Don't worry. He says just every child, he said, comes with another budget for cleaning and cooking help. Yeah, it comes with another budget. And I believe it wholeheartedly because we see it. Just we have emunah and everything else. We could also have emunah that Hashem will give us a budget for cleaning help, right? We have enough emunah and we trust Hashem. So I want to end off, I guess, with also I was thinking, these times are very hard. When we're reading the news, in the last video, go to I'll link that to how to get through these hard times. But of course, the most important thing is to strengthen our emunah, to remind ourselves to read things about emunah, to listen to shiurim about emunah, and to strengthen our emunah, and to realize that Hashem is the only one we can turn to, and to know that Hashem has saved us. Hashem has saved us for thousands of years and kept us here. We've had enemies bigger than Hamas try to annihilate us, and Hashem will continue to protect us and have trust in Hashem. So thank you for joining us, empowering women everywhere to get out of those boxes that we lock ourselves in, and not be afraid, and change the world.
Amen.
Ooh. Oh.